Welcome to California Frontier, the show about the often overlooked and unexpected early history of the place we call California. I'm your host, Damian Basic. The language now spoken in our country, the laws that govern us, and the faces we bump into on a daily basis are new to us, the owners of the land. Of course, they are antagonistic to our interests and rights. But why would that matter to the conqueror? He wants what is good for himself and not what is good for us. I consider this to be a very natural thing in individuals. But I condemn this on the part of a government that had promised to respect our rights and make others do the same, and to treat us as they treat their own children. But what good does it do for us to complain? The damage has been done, and now there is no remedy for it. Those are the words of the final chapter of the memoirs of General Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo. He was arguably the most powerful man in the northern part of Alta California. He was a military commander, founder of a town, a politician, and a patriarch. And after the American takeover, he helped form the new state and fought to preserve the history of Spanish and Mexican California. Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo was born at Monterey, Alta California, in 1808, into a family who had come to Alta California in the early years. He was the son of Ignacio Vallejo, a soldier who had arrived with Junipero Serra in 1769. Ignacio later served as alcalde, or chief magistrate, of the pueblo of San Jose. His mother, Maria Antonia Lugo, was also the daughter of a soldier and was born at San Luis Obispo in 1776. Mariano spent his childhood years in the port city of Monterey. As a young boy, growing up in the capital of the territory had its advantages. His parents wished him to have an education, something that was not easily available among soldiers on the frontier. Yet Mariano was quick-witted and soon found a mentor in Don Pablo Vicente de Solá, the governor of California. Together with his nephew, Juan, who was actually very close to him in age, and José de Jesús Castro, Mariano received an education unavailable to most young people in that time and place. Governor Solá taught the boys to read and write, and supplied them with books like Don Quixote de la Mancha and other works of literature. He also furnished them with political books that were normally forbidden in Spain's colonies. Like Mariano, the other two boys would go on to become important leaders in Mexican California. Juan Bautista Alvarado would eventually be named governor, and José Castro would become a military commander. As a teenager, Mariano continued his studies with a scholarly Englishman named William Hartnell, learning English, French, and Latin. Hartnell had settled in Alta California, marrying Maria Teresa de la Guerra, daughter of José de la Guerra y Noriega. Don José was the comandante of the Santa Barbara presidio and one of the most powerful men in that area. Growing up in a military family, army life was familiar to Mariano. In 1824, he became a 15-year-old cadet in the Monterey Company. While serving as a cadet, he put his education to use as the personal secretary to Governor Luis Arguello. In 1827, he was commissioned as alferez, which is the equivalent of a second lieutenant, and became an officer of the San Francisco presidio. Although assigned to San Francisco, Mariano remained stationed in Monterey for the next 3 years, carrying out important and sometimes dangerous assignments. In 1829, he led an expedition of Mission Indians and Mexican soldiers against Estanislao, an Indian from Mission San Jose. Estanislao who had been a native alcalde or leader there, led a large group of warriors resentful of the difficult conditions at the mission. Together, they created a fortified stronghold in the Central Valley and defeated a number of attacks launched against them. The forces commanded by Vallejo were eventually victorious, however, and Estanislao returned to Mission San Jose. Although there were later reports that soldiers and Indian auxiliaries had used unnecessary violence during and after the battle, the engagement became a defining and proud moment for the young officer. In 1830, Vallejo finally began serving as an officer at the San Francisco Presidio. 2 years later, he married Francisca Benicia. Francisca was born in San Diego to one of the most prominent Californio families. And years later, Mariano founded the city of Benicia, which he named after his wife. For a short time, the city was the capital of the state of California. Together, Francisco and Mariano had 16 children, 6 of whom died in childhood. One of their sons, Platón Vallejo, later became California's first native-born medical doctor. Platón also served as a battlefield physician for the Union during the Civil War. While stationed at San Francisco, the young officer received further responsibilities. In 1833, he was sent on a mission to the northern frontier to find out about the activities of the Russian colony on the coast. The things that Vallejo learned exploring the northern reaches of Mexican territory and his contact with the Russians led to the founding of a Mexican pueblo and military outpost close to the mission at Sonoma. The mission, San Francisco Solano, was the last and most northern of the mission chain. Like the rest of the missions, the government had ordered it to be secularized, converted into a town and a parish church. The task of secularization fell to Vallejo. In 1834, as part of the process, Governor Figueroa granted Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo Rancho Petaluma, which had been part of the lands of the mission and the Indians who lived there. Vallejo would spend the rest of his life in and around Rancho Petaluma. One of the most remarkable aspects of Vallejo's life was his friendship and alliance with the Suyasun Patwin Indian chieftain named Samieto, later baptized as Francisco Solano, and often known as Chief Solano. Prior to his alliance with Vallejo, Solano lived both inside and outside the mission system. He fought against Spanish and Mexican militaries and was a skilled warrior. As early as 1834, however, it seems that he and other Suyasuns had begun aiding Vallejo in campaigns against other native tribes. Their most important battles were against the Satillom, who lived in the Mendocino region to the north and west of the Suyasuns. For his help, Solano and his warriors became a militia attached to the Mexican army. Over time, both Vallejo and Solano became fast friends, and even their families grew close. Vallejo's 7th son, Platón, became fluent in the language of the Suyasun Indians, and later conserved and passed down some of the only linguistic information that we have about their language. Because of his successes, in 1839, Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo was made military commander and director of the settlement of the northern frontier. He established the pueblo of Sonoma that year and a military presidio to guard the northernmost reaches of Mexican territory. From then on, he remained mainly in Sonoma and the North Bay region of Alta California. By that time, Vallejo's influence had made him one of the most powerful men in Alta California. Under the governorship of Juan Bautista Alvarado, he became Commandant General of all military forces in 1836. Although he was a Mexican military commander, Vallejo had mixed feelings about Mexican rule in Alta California. Like most Californios, he was generally welcoming of foreigners and outside influences. He believed that the Mexican government was mishandling its far-flung territory, and he was even open to the idea of joining the United States. During the Bear Flag Revolt of 1846, the instigators of the rebellion, whom the Californios called osos or bears, came to take Vallejo prisoner. Instead of resisting them directly, the general invited them in to offer them a meal and ply them with liquor. He professed his sympathy with the cause of union with the United States, and he treated the men with courtesy. The strategy did not quite work to his plans. Although both his house and his family were spared any abuse, Vallejo and his brother Salvador were sent as prisoners to Sutter's Fort on the Sacramento River. There, they were given good treatment at first, but when American Army Major John C. Fremont arrived, he ordered that they be treated like any other prisoner. Both Mariano and Salvador lost a great deal of weight due to harsh treatment. Mariano wound up contracting malaria during his time of imprisonment. Despite his treatment, Vallejo remained sympathetic to the U.S. takeover. In 1849, he became a member of the California State Constitutional Convention. The following year, he became a member of the first state legislature. In the legislature, he fought to have the accomplishments of his fellow Californios recognized. He also sought to preserve California's pre-statehood history. In 1850, he wrote a report on the origins of the names of several counties. This report, although perhaps not accurate in all its details, is very interesting and shows how Californios understood the history of their land. Vallejo felt deeply that it was important for the Californios' voices to be heard. He wanted their version of the state's history to have a prominent place in the official record. During his later years, the old general was particularly helpful in aiding historian Hubert Howe Bancroft. Thanks to him, Bancroft was able to send researchers Thomas Savage, Henry Cerruti, and others to compile oral histories of surviving Californios. Vallejo's vast knowledge of the territory and his ties of marriage, patronage, and friendship gave him the ability to open doors for these men. The testimonies they recorded would eventually form the basis of Bancroft's multi-volume History of California and other works. Despite the help he gave to Bancroft, Vallejo believed that the true story of Spanish and Mexican California was still misunderstood. So he wrote his own notes titled Historical and Personal Remembrances Related to Alta California. He wrote nearly 1,000 pages collected into 5 volumes of information about the history of Alta California between 1769 and 1850. And this work has recently been translated and published by the University of Oklahoma Press. And I hope to have the translators and editors, Drs. Rosemarie Beebe and Robert Senkowitz, on the podcast in order to talk about the work. As he grew older, Vallejo tended to spend most of his time at his home in Sonoma, which he had named Lacrima Montis, Tear of the Mountain in Latin. General Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo died on January 18th, 1890, at the age of 82 years old. In 2017, the town of Sonoma, where Vallejo spent so many years and left such a mark, dedicated a statue in his honor. Among those who spoke at the statue's dedication was Martha Magedigan Vallejo, great-great-granddaughter of Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo. The statue is pretty unique in that it has him sitting on a bench in the central park that is the main plaza of the town of Sonoma. And you can go sit down right next to the general and have your photo taken with him and spend a few minutes contemplating the impact that this general of Mexico's furthest northern frontier had on the upper reaches of Alta California. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the California Frontier Show. If you'd like to support the show, the best thing to do is to let other people know about it. If you'd like to support it monetarily, there are a couple ways of doing that. One is by scrolling down in your podcast app to where it says support the show. There you can become a subscriber for as little as $3 a month. And if you want to give a one-time donation, just below you'll see where it says give a one-time donation. Finally, the show is supported by California History Teachers, which is a full year of lessons for 4th grade California history and social studies. You can find out more at www.californiahistoryteachers.com. And if you input the coupon code PODCAST, you'll receive 25% off your monthly or annual subscription. So check it out.